Welcome to another episode of the Break the Rules live stream. I'm your host, Lev Polyakov, and today we are here with Haela Hunt-Hendrix of the black metal band Liturgy. It is a great pleasure to have you with us today. And of course, we've got the great and powerful Gnostic Informant joining live. It's always a great pleasure to talk to you, buddy. I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to be talking today about specifically Christianity, but revealed religion in general versus applying one's own, let's say, knowledge and wisdom over time through philosophical inquiry in order to know God, in order to figure out what exactly is going on here. And as always, before we get started, make sure to like, subscribe, need those super chats, and patreon.com/breaktherules. We're going to be having an event with Jason Giorgiani, with Styx, a lot of great events in New York City, which I would love for you guys to join. $20 patrons get to join them. So anyway, without further ado, let us go to Haela first. Haela, please tell us a little bit about yourself. This is your first time, and hopefully not the last on BTR. Let me know what exactly brought you into the Christian faith and how exactly you see it, because you don't really see it like a lot of other people do. Like, I've read posts where you were talking about Vajrayana Buddhism in connection to Christianity, so it doesn't seem like your typical kind of Christianity. So, yeah, let us know what you think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to chatting. Yeah, I guess my attitude towards Christianity is, I mean, it's kind of unorthodox, but it's also like literally, orthodox. So I practice Orthodox Christianity specifically, and I'm a musician and a philosopher as well. So I, take continental philosophy very seriously, and I studied a lot of occult and Cabala and things like that. And I talk about Christianity a lot in my kind of outer persona. I kind of think of musical performances as a liturgical practice, and so I'm interested in like kind of the connection between the avant-garde and Christianity, but I do take dogmatic faith very seriously. So I believe that the ecumenical councils of the church are that they present the truth of Christianity, but that in the contemporary time, like there are things to update. So I sort of have this idea of like universal orthodoxy, which is like a sort of synthesis of Orthodox Christianity with kind of with like Anglicanism, but just generally also with like modern secular concerns, whatever.
So, Neil, for those who don't know, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your own journey as well. And also, Haela, see if there is any way that you can get a possibly better internet connection, because your audio is there, but there have been a couple of freezings going on. Are you connected to the right
Really?
Wi-Fi spot? Yeah, like make sure that all of your Wi-Fi, wire it in if you have to, plug it in somewhere, but we gotta make sure that everybody hears you loud and clear without any hiccups. But anyway, Neil, buddy, tell us about your experience and what drove you to looking at things more from a philosophical perspective.
Yeah, I found Christianity and when I was at a rock bottom place in prison, because Christianity sort of speaks to people in those positions that you want to be like the prodigal son, you want to be like the one that's brought back into the fold and cherished and reborn and made pure, all that stuff. And so that's how I kind of got into it. But then I ended up after years of going to church with a evangelical church. I sort of started studying my way out of it. If that makes sense. And I became convinced that the earliest Christians, and I still believe this view, that the earliest Christians were the Gnostics. And that's simply going back and reading the against heresies by Hippolytus and Irenaeus and Epiphanius, and they they all seem to agree that the early layer of the church was divided up between the Simonians, um, the Church of James, the Church of Mark, and the Valentinians, the Sethians, the Carpocratians, the Nacenes, and all these different groups that are sort of vying and debating and having all this wonderful, what it seemed like a colorful, three-dimensional church at the time. And it seems to, it's funny because we think of Catholics today as like, or even Orthodox today, as like polar opposites to like a Mormon, but they actually have more in common today than some of these earliest first century Christian groups did.
Whoa. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody.
It's all right.
All right, so hopefully everything's going to be all right with the sound now. And Liturgy, you are on mute. Haela, you are on mute right now. But we are going to continue with this. So hopefully when you're going to be not on mute, there's not going to be any more echo. So, Neil, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I was just finishing my point and saying, like, I'm looking at the history and I'm saying, I think what makes a church, or, I mean, the word, I don't like the word church. I like the word, the original ecclesia, which is just, what is the word that they use? They use associations. I think what makes an association more, not powerful, but more attractive, I would say, is the ability to have opposing viewpoints that directly oppose each other. So similar to what we see in Rabbinic Judaism with the Mishnah and Gemara, and they're going back and forth and they disagree on almost everything.
Yeah.
That type of debate, open debate, dialectic is what drives the needle forward. And so I actually disagree with Liturgy that the Ecumenical Council is something that is, well, you said something you believe in, but I even beyond just being believe in it, I think it totally takes the power away from a movement when you have to have a dogma and people have to believe in XYZ. This happened in the past. You have no way of verifying it, but we're just going to tell you if you don't believe it, then you're not part of our church. That to me is like you're no more. It's no longer philosophical. It's now just completely doctrinal, and that, just wanted to lay that out there.
So to you, they grabbed the needle. The Ecumenical Council grabbed that needle, and they didn't allow it to keep moving. So, Haela, what say you?
All right. So first of all, is this better?
It is better. You're a little bit quiet, but I'll adjust you on my end. No worries.
Okay. Yeah, I switched to my phone. I think my computer's being a little bit weird, and there's no like Ethernet jack. So if this is better, this works. Okay. So I was half listening while you were saying that, since I was kind of switching over, but it sounded like you're basically saying that you were raised with Christianity, and then you incline towards Gnosticism because first of all, the Gnostics were the earliest Christians, which is, I mean, I certainly know what you mean. I think there was a widespread practice of, I mean, we can talk about what exactly Gnosticism means, because there were a lot of different kinds,
right?
And you feel that dogma is limiting, basically, and that people should be able to debate. So, I mean, I know what you mean, and I do I certainly agree that updates are needed at times and this kind of thing, and that the personal experience of God is important. I mean that's a big Protestant point too.
Well, that was also the big debate between the so-called Gnostics and the so-called proto-Orthodoxy. Was you had Irenaeus and you have Hippolytus, and they're arguing for bishopric authority over everything else. And you have on the other side the so-called Gnostics, because they don't all call themselves Gnostics, so I'd say so-called Gnostics. You know, the Valentinians, the Sethians, the Nicenes, the Coppercreans, those groups. They're saying, no, screw bishop authority. Jesus would have hated that. It's all about divine revelation. So it's like there's like this democratic side, and then there's this like oligarchic side, which is the Orthodoxy. I think. That's how I would describe it.
So I mean, so the first thing I would say is that, dogma, the Christian dogmas are mysteries, right? So they are they're these powerful symbols, kind of, and they're not really super explicit doctrines. Like what does it mean? That God and Jesus are one, for example, or that Jesus had both the human and a divine will. So I mean, that's one thing, is that they're arcana, kind of. But then also, I mean, why can't revelation happen to a council? Why does it have to be? Because I think the thing with anything goes spirituality is like, what about like sinners who say that they think God is that something evil is God.
Well, I think the way that was dealt with in the early days was that no one would listen to someone like that. In order for someone to be divinely inspired, they would be convincing to people.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Satan is pretty convincing.
Yeah, but then there's also a question of divine inspiration, where exactly that emanates from. Because you have, for example, in this great book, Daimonic Reality by Patrick Harper, he writes about these Virgin Mary sightings and talks about how the same places where people were seeing the Virgin Mary were places that in the old days the pagans used to see certain other kinds of goddesses present. So the question is, what exactly are these forces that people are experiencing? People would attribute any kind of force that's beyond their comprehension, specifically coming from not just God, but specifically having to do with their religion. Even though if you were to go to India, they would not be experiencing Mary, they would be experiencing like a Dakini or Kali or whatever. So the question here is, how much are the things that we're attributing to this divine revelation having to specifically do with Christianity, as opposed to Christianity being a mask that could be worn by some other worldly powers that we don't really have a specific understanding of yet?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that, I've actually been studying the history of the 7 ecumenical councils recently, pretty closely. So, in the Orthodox tradition, as opposed to the Catholic tradition, the Catholics keep having councils over and over, and the Catholics have a pope that has the authority and stuff. But in the Orthodox tradition, there were just 7, and the last one is called the Triumph of Orthodoxy, and it's when there had been iconoclasm briefly when the Umayyad Caliphate invaded the Holy Land. They made it denounced icon veneration, and then they brought icon veneration back, and that was the final council. The process of developing Christian dogma during the councils it's just so fascinating, because it wasn't just like a top-down imposition. There was within Christianity, within Orthodox Christianity, there was a lot of fierce debate, and usually what they came up with was always sort of the craziest, most unlikely doctrine. That there was something actually really kind of magical and philosophical in the process of developing the doctrine of the Trinity, And so I mean, I just kind of believe that they were onto something. Or I mean, I guess I believe that God was revealing the nature of Christ through the councils. You know, like would you like, you know, one can take that idea seriously.
Sure. When you were mentioning how do you figure out if someone's divinely inspired rather than possessed by Satan? That's the very question that actually drove me out of Christianity altogether. And it's like, because like at the end of the day, it's like Peter has a dream in the Book of Acts that all of a sudden pork is okay and shellfish is okay. You can eat whatever you want now because, you know, whatever. God changed his mind. It's like what happened to the Mosaic law? What happened to all the law being kept? And so what drove me out of this was like, you're left with this incoherent cherry pick whatever you need at whatever time period whatever situation you're in. It's a situational thing now. Like cherry pick from the Old Testament if you have to, but just kind of steadfast to faith in Christ type of thing. Where what I'm more attracted to nowadays is in philosophy. I think what we call paganism, because they didn't really call themselves pagans, but the old polytheistic traditions of these mystery cults, there was a lot more philosophical inquiry because the gods didn't just represent like things that happened in the past that you have to like hope happened and follow, like just like think, oh yeah, it happened. We're just going to throw it. They're just going to place Abraham in history against all evidence, like whatever. No, the polytheistic traditions don't really care about that. You can have wild stories about people flying on unicorns and stuff. Like it doesn't really matter. There's a philosophical layer there. There is a mystery there, like you were talking about. There's psychology going on too. It's all types of ancient ways of getting at psychologies, philosophy, and those type of things. And I think what matters is the most is the divine inspiration from the poet being inspired to write some sort of mythology or story that influences people in the world and has an impact on the world right away, immediately.
So the question that I would ask to Haela is, why would that kind of inspiration come from Satan or from some demon as opposed to coming from the same source as the church fathers may have been inspired from?
I just want to, not to cut you off, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but just to answer that real quick. There is no Satan. There's different gods inspiring different people in different ways, and it doesn't have to be a unilateral thing, because I think that takes all the power away from an all-knowing, all-powerful God if it's unilateral. But like we're left to like do all the bidding. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and Haela, before you respond, if you have, when Neil speaks afterwards, any headphones you could put in, that would be good so that there wouldn't be any audio feedback. Otherwise, you got to mute yourself so we don't hear Neil on your end. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay. Anyway, please answer. Yeah. Oh, you got to mute yourself, though. There we go.
So I'm just gonna point out that Christians discovered mathematical physics, but I'm gonna go get a charger for my phone. So if you want to talk a little bit more, Lev, I'll be right back.
All right. While Haela is going to grab her phone, Neil, what would you say to the Christians who would say, well, sure, like the pagans were maybe onto something, but they were misled by this satanic force, and we have the true revelations?
They prove it. I mean, I just don't know why I'm supposed to think that's convincing when you're just making a claim like that, because I can look at the ancient world and I can look at Homer, I can look at Euripides, I can look at Sophocles, I can look at Nonus in the 5th century AD, and I can see that these people were inspiring people. They're making an impact. Now, does that mean the gods really showed up in his room and told him what to write? No. But there was some sort of something happening in the world that the poet was inspired by some events happening in the world, and you can call it God, you can call it whatever, the muse or whatever. Something was inspiring the poet to write something, people are inspired by that poetry. That's, to me, is divine inspiration. It doesn't have to be some ordained thing by some guy who's on the top of a economic food chain that just decides that he has the vision that no one else can have. So I think it's important that we have that opening up those lines of divinely inspired, and then make it artistic. Make art as your medium for what we call divinely inspired.
Now, I do want to push back a little bit later on.
But I mean, Christendom also produced the Renaissance. You know, like
I would totally disagree with that.
Yeah, we can get into Platon right now because what I wanted to.
Let me respond a little bit.
Sure.
So I mean, so first, again, I do. My view is that, like Christ came to Earth, like that God sent His Son to Earth, to die for our sins, and that that was an act of mercy, and that there's something special about the Christian tradition because, like, if one really believes that Christ's sacrifice was for our sins, then we're sort of free to have this new kind of compassion, basically, And so, like, a big distinguishing feature in Christianity that distinguishes it from Gnosticism, within Christianity, a lot of what Christians will say is that, anything that's Gnostic is someone who thinks of Christ as a knowledge bearer rather than as a sacrifice, right? So, like, when you imagine that God actually sacrificed His Son, that like a new world of possibility opens up, and like Christians, you're opposing philosophy to Christianity, but like Christendom has had a pretty impressive philosophy tradition, like it really has. Like we have this kind of very contemporary idea that faith is opposed to reason or something like that, which is like a pretty recent thing, and really I think it's like that's kind of an American evangelical thing where people just want to think about the Bible and faith, and where we have this sort of secular horizon where it's assumed that the reasonable thing is that there's no God at all, whereas like that's just a preconception that's out there that was never proven by anybody. But yeah, I mean, so I'm sure you've read a lot of Christian theology. It's not like it's less mystical or it's less rigorous or anything like that. Anyway, that's I have a couple of responses.
Before Neil responds, to be clear, from what I've read about Christianity, you can never know the essence of God. You can only know the energy of God. And I'm not sure, Neil, would you agree with that is a limitation that Christianity has, where people like Gemistus Plethon and other philosophically inclined paganists took the view that it is possible to know the essence of God, and it is possible to transcend your state through the process of philosophy, as opposed to just receiving grace.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to be like Reddit tier, fedora tipping atheist on this one, but I do think it's important to point out that the whole idea of sin and sacrificing the Son for sin, to me, just sounds incoherent. And I think it's circular, because why do we even have sin? Well,
it doesn't mean it's not true though. Credo quia absurdus est.
Sure, it's fine. It's possible that there really was an Adam and Eve, and there really is sin, and we need to be saved from it. But to me, it's like, it sounds so limiting to humanity to do that, to just trap our entire worldview under this thing called sin that we just made up ourselves.
Well, but what if we didn't make it up? I mean, like you're assuming that it's not true in your criticism of it.
Well, I could just say you're assuming that it is true. I mean, we're just at square one again, you know.
Well, I am, but I am assuming that it is true. But the fruits of Christianity are like joy and like love and community and stuff like that. So like, I mean, I guess to make a point in a different way, like we're all assuming something is true, you know, like that's the concept of the master signifier in Lacan. You know, it's like you we assume that someone out there has this knowledge that we don't need to do the thinking because they have it, you know. And so I mean, everyone's doing that, but part of the beauty of Christian faith is that you're sort of fully aware that at a certain point you're just taking a leap of faith, but it's one that is it's like a good one to take.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a lot easier just to assume that we start off with what we can know for sure, and then we go from there instead of start with a starting point with like, oh, this mythology of Adam and Eve has to be there no matter what, and then we have to work off that. To me, we're just trapping ourselves. So did that make sense what I just said?
Well, what do we know for sure?
Nothing.
There are certain things that we do know.
You start from there. You go on with what you experience in their day-to-day world. You go on with being joy.
Yeah.
What brings us joy?
Yeah.
And then you explore those things.
But specifically with Christianity, though, Neil, your journey as the Gnostic Informant has been to talk to all kinds of different scholars about the origins of the Torah, Christianity, and all that. And through that process, you were able to see that certain things didn't really fit, as far as certain translations of Hebrew terms, as well as having too many.
That's a whole different.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying. But I'm just saying that there are so many holes that you were able to poke in Christianity for yourself that it didn't really leave something that is that tangible for you to grab onto. Would that be a correct way of seeing that?
Yeah. I think what you have in Christianity is a evolution of ideas progressing from the time where you get the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament, which influences Hellenistic Judaism, which influences gospel writers. Jesus comes along, obviously, before that. Paul, and then you end up like, it takes a long time, but 4 centuries go by, and you have a church, a Roman church. And I don't think it's, I think when you look at how that progresses, it's a slow progression. It even continues after that, as Liturgy would agree with, that there's more 7, like she said, 7 ecumenical councils, and it's just trying to. It's a church. It's a ecclesia, a group of people trying to figure it all out, and it takes time. But what I'm more so when I'm looking at the whole thing as like a macro, it's just like I just see it as just like any other, I don't know, any other worldview that develops over time. I don't see it as like something that shows any sort of standout that makes any. I don't see anything special about it. I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some of your content. Your videos come up now and then when I'm like, I consume a lot of occultism content as I'm like, passing out and stuff like that. And so your videos will come up and like, so I know you have this general, this kind of like, like what the church told you isn't true kind of thing, going on. And
I think we lost her.
Don't worry. It's a cell phone. We have good cell phones today, so hopefully the cell phones are going to come back. But I'm going to take this pause to just say, everybody, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, as well as subscribing to Neil's channel if you had not done that yet. And like I said before, we're going to have people going to New York City. Neil, I hope you go back to New York City soon as well. And we're going to be throwing rooftop parties at my condo for $20 plus patrons. with watching the shows that we put on. So that's going to be a great time for all. Giorgiani's coming back. Styx, Hex and Hammer 666 is coming to New York City just for BTR. Just for BTR, so that is extremely special. So make sure you do that. But if I were to go back to the point about... we lost her. We'll get her back. If I were to go back to the point about intellect versus revelation, because you were talking about how these pagans, like the poets and such, also received certain transmissions from who knows where, the daimonic realm or whatever, and that inspired their worldview. Platon, as well as, others who are following the path of Plato, would disagree as far as talking about the path, the only path being that of intellect, being that of, rational discourse and figuring all that out. But we're going to get to that a little bit later because Liturgy is back here. How are you? And, so let us continue. So what do you think about what Neil had to say?
Sorry, my tech scenario is such a mess. My phone overheated for some reason. Yes. So, I'm interested in certain Gnostic texts and certain Gnostic ideas. I think that there was one thing is true. I think that the feminine was a little bit repressed in Christianity, and so the idea of Sophia. Is something that I think is worth kind of reincorporating, but part of why I converted to Orthodoxy is because contemporary Russian Orthodox theology has made that change. You may be aware of the Sophiology tradition.
I've heard of it, but can you tell us what's going on with that? If you don't mind, I would love to hear about what's going on with that. It's relevant, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. I want to get to my other point too, but yeah, the basic idea is that Sophia is, she is a divine feminine, and she is. It's hard to pin down exactly what she is. I think because of her sort of crafty feminine nature, but she's God's body, she's God's object of desire. She is nature qua God. She's God's appearance in the world. She's kind of the divine sphere that is both God and not God.
In the Apocryphon of John, she's called the world soul.
Yeah, exactly. She's the world soul. And interestingly, Bulgakov, who was sort of he wasn't quite the first, but the most thorough of the first people to bring Sophia into Orthodox theology, was inspired by Marx, actually. So he had been a Marxist, and he was he wasn't a Bolshevik. He was a legalist, I guess, and so he was exiled from Russia. He was one of the first Marxists, in Russia, and so he the idea of historical materialism in Marx, it actually kind of mirrors the idea of a world soul that's developing, and so he unified Marxism with Christianity through the idea of Sophia. And actually bringing up Marx is maybe good for responding to what I was responding to, which is that I think that Christianity is different from other orientations. Partly I think that it was the successful one, because it had a kind of adaptive value, because the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, because the Israelites were a military adversary, to Rome, and there was a strong Christian tradition that was kind of fiercer or whatever, and that Christianity conquered the Roman Empire, through people's enthusiasm, and then it's been a very influential force on world history. The secular horizon that we live in. People complain that wokeness it's Protestantism, I mean, that, like, it's true that, like, this, our secular world is the dominance of Christianity, and we don't call it Christianity anymore, but
Yeah, I agree with that
or
100%.
Yeah. Neil was always talking about how the OG
Yeah.
Christians, they were the original social justice warriors.
Yeah,
uh-huh.
I agree with what you said, and so and I think that's why Christianity was so dominant throughout the third century, during the time of the crisis of the third century, when the economy is destroyed. Christianity is like offers a handout to people who are on the bottom, the plebs, the slaves, the women, the downtrodden. And so it becomes, and then all the soldiers and the low ranks of the army, but all are becoming Christians. And so you end up with a huge, massive network because it has that ability to do that. Whereas by that period of time, the polytheistic traditions are all mystery cults, and there's a hierarchy, and everyone's trying to get to the top, and there's a smaller population of those people, and they don't survive. It's that big population of the downtrodden, the lowly, the plebs, the slaves, the women, who are carrying Christianity into the 4th century. The Romans realized this, legalized Christianity, because now you have 10% of the population is Christian. Now that's a substantial amount. And so, yeah, but like all this is not this is all crediting Christianity, by the way. I'm not saying this as like, oh, I'm going to explain it all away. No, this is credit to Christianity. Christianity is adaptive in that sense. I agree with you on that. The thing is, I guess where I'm going to differ is it just seems like and this is why I agree with the term Dark Ages. A lot of people hate that term. I don't call it the Dark Ages because it was like the world ended and it was like massive starvation. I only call it the Dark Ages for one reason, because of literature. And I'm simply doing this. I'm simply looking at the classical period where you have Homer, you have Sophocles, you have Euripides, you have Sappho, and you have all these poets writing about different things and different gods and different things and all these different topics and stuff. Whereas from 500 till 1,000, we'll even go beyond that a little bit, till the time you get to like the age of King Arthur and Beowulf and all those texts. You really don't have any type of literature outside of on the Trinity or on Mother Mary or on the grace of God. And it's just like a bunch of treatises by church fathers. And so I'm not saying Dark Ages as in like the world was so horrible that, everyone was in famine. I'm saying I call it Dark Ages for the original definition that Petrarch used it for. Petrarch's the guy who coined the term Dark Ages, by the way, in the medieval, and not in the medieval, in the Renaissance. And he was looking at, and he's doing exactly what I'm doing right now. He's looking at that time period and going, where are all the classical texts? And so the reason why I bring that up is because the world seems like it was, at some point, loses its color. It becomes black and white. And it becomes two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional. It becomes this like, it just becomes a world that just doesn't seem like I don't know. It loses its power. It loses that Dionysian spirit that was once there. And I think the Renaissance, as Lev's starting to figure out now, me and Lev are talking about this, the Renaissance was a turn back to the spirit of the early pagan traditions. That's why you see all these artworks by Michelangelo and all these Renaissance painters and sculptors painting old polytheistic Homer and Hesiod and all that stuff.
To be fair though, they were painting a lot of Christian scenes as well.
Oh, of course.
But the question for me is, how much of that was Christianity being worn like the skin, while the interior were some of those things that you were talking about?
A lot of scholars credit Platon for the Renaissance, that his writings, because when Platon died...
Wait, just so people know who Platon is. Platon Gemistus, he was a Greek, lived during the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah, in the 13th century, right before the Renaissance. No. Well, later than that, actually.
Right before Constantinople fell.
Yeah. Right before Constantinople fell, he started writing all these treatises on Zoroastrianism, Dionysian religion, Chaldean mysteries, Orphic mysteries, Homer, Plato, all that stuff. And he takes his works and gives it to Medici and says, Medici, the first Medici, the original Medici, he says, they're going to burn my books when I die. So take this and lock it up in one of your banks and then only give it out to those who you deem worthy. And he ends up teaching the academy in Florence, which is where the Renaissance flourishes.
The Platonic Academy.
They're learning, they're reading Platon, and they're painting what they're reading. So a lot of, like, the Birth of Venus, one of the famous Renaissance paintings, is from Platon. It's from a painter reading Platon and then writing it down and then painting it. Because the Birth of Venus is found in Platon, by the way. So I'm just saying that turn back to me. That's my opinion on the Renaissance. There was a turn back to the old way.
I want to make sure, Haela, when your audio is on, when you're not muted, there's a feedback loop that happens where we hear a little bit of Neil's audio as like crackling sounds. So please mute yourself when Neil is speaking, just so, or wear headphones, either one. But anyway, let us know what you think.
Okay, yeah. On me, I would, but I have to be charging my phone because it's not charged. So there's only one jack. So
see, that's the problem with these iPhones today. They're limiting us to just using a jack for that. It's BS. But anyway, yeah. Unless you get some Bluetooth headphones. Unless you get some Bluetooth headphones.
Apple of knowledge shouldn't have fit in the apple of knowledge.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I didn't know anything about Platon. Until Lev, you brought it up. You brought him up in some DMs, and he seems really cool. But he was from. I mean, I'm not sure quite what you mean about the Dark Ages because Platon was from Constantinople, right? And so like, I mean, certainly during the time period that you're talking about, in Western Europe, like, you could argue that things were, a little bit in decline or whatever, but like, and incidentally, my view, which is I've recently kind of come to this view with the conversion to Orthodoxy, is that the translation of the Bible into Latin was like degraded Christianity a little bit, so that like like Western theology has this like mechanical quality to it, God has no choice but to realize all possibilities. He doesn't have as much sort of interpenetration with the world. The human soul can't really be deified. It's kind of like there's this like gloomy quality to Catholicism that like everyone kind of knows about. And and in the Orthodox tradition, they were still using Greek, the language that the Bible was written in, the New Testament. They still had access to all of those works in antiquity. Like there didn't need to be a Renaissance in the Byzantine sphere.
I agree with that. But I think the Byzantines that fled Constantinople to go west brought the Renaissance. I think that's part of why the Renaissance comes from the west.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but they were in Christendom. So I mean, I guess I'm kind of agreeing with you. I think that like this is part of why I've turned to Orthodoxy. That like I believe that the true, because that's the Eastern one. So that the true Christian tradition
is Orthodox. I agree.
Is yeah.
Believe it or not, I actually come to the conclusion that if Christianity was true, that the Church of Christianity, the original Church of Christianity, is the Greek Orthodox Church. That's my thoughts on that.
But there was a interesting thing that happened during that time, if we're talking about Platon here. When...
I didn't mean to cut you off, though. Sorry, Lev. I cut her off.
Sorry. No problem. But I just wanted to bring attention for you and for Haela to the priests themselves, who didn't care that much, at least during that time, whether or not Islam was going to take over Constantinople. Like, as long as they had Mount Athos to themselves, they were cool with it. So, to me, that's a sign that there doesn't seem to be as much focus on the
That's a sign of a real Christian to me. not caring who's in government and just
Yeah.
wanting to pray all day, that's a real Christian to me.
It is a real Christian, but the question here is that if we're talking about judging a religion by its fruits, then that fruit seems to be one that does not focus at all on the here and now, on improving it. So, let the dice fall where they may. We're not really going to take that much part. I'm curious, like, from your perspective, Haela, when it comes to this life, like this earthly existence, how much do you attribute to the need to make something of that versus waiting for Jesus to come back and all these things that have nothing to do with our present existence?
Right. Well, but so again, I mean, capitalism is Christian. The Protestant work ethic is capitalism, and capitalists are pretty effective. So,
but that's Protestantism.
My current, yes. So my, let's see. I have a couple of different thoughts. I'm not sure which one to, because I still have my thought from before as well. But like, my current theory is that a kind of second fall took place when Catholics adopted the filioque, and they basically that the Great Schism shouldn't have happened. And so humans have freedom, and Christ came to forgive our sins, and the church formed, and then maybe there was kind of another fall. I think Christianity should have stayed united, and that maybe it wouldn't have declined as much if Catholics hadn't fallen away. But
it's funny that we're talking about Platon.
Yeah.
Platon, before he turned away from Christianity altogether, his last project that's recorded in his biography was trying to unite the churches, and he failed.
Right.
And then I think he must have realized at that point that it's never going to happen. I'm just going to turn to other things, and he just gave up on it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that about Platon. I know that Empress Irene tried to do this as well. So she was a female Roman emperor. I'm just finished a text kind of about this. She was a female Roman emperor. She presided over the Seventh Ecumenical Council, and it was because she was female and that had never happened before that the Pope at the time took that as a pretext to crown Charlemagne emperor, and for political reasons, because he wanted Charlemagne to protect him. And she actually tried to marry Charlemagne. Maybe you know this. She also tried to unify through marriage, and I guess she was thwarted in doing that by someone who betrayed her in her own court. But I just think that so like, and this is maybe gets back to your point. Like, I agree with what you're saying about not wanting a religion to be like gloomy or like overly authoritarian, or like just like treating people like these sort of worthless worms or whatever. And like that's and Christianity gets a bad rap for that. Like people who but in the Orthodox tradition there is the tradition of theosis. So first of all, that like people, you really can attain sainthood in this life, and that like white magic is kind of a bigger deal. Like that there really is a divine energy that's kind of like the Tao, and that you can make use of it, but you're supposed to only do it for healing purposes and things like that. And then another thing that I like about it is how much interpenetration there is between liturgical practice and philosophy and theology, right? That you need both, so that you can't make contact with God just by reading or just by worshiping. That you really need to do both, and that's I know I've been the one kind of defending Christianity for most of this, but like I would say that what's difficult, I kind of already said this, but like that, the problem with occultism that I see is that, people end up kind of being monsters some of the time, not all the time, but like you start doing black magic, you're like summoning demons, making contact with evil forces, you're kind of like building up yourself, and then just kind of causing all this harm, to others,
Yeah.
and to yourself as well. And that some balance between rationalism, personal mysticism, and collective devotion to a tradition, all together. And so, like for me, like I wouldn't call myself a Christian if I didn't go to church all the time. I go to church twice a week. I sing in my choir. I go to vigil. I go to, and like that, I feel myself sort of receiving like divine energy from doing that. It makes me kinder, it makes me more thoughtful. I do other kind of self-examination practices and stuff like that, and like try to practice altruism and so forth. Just like these little things that you don't necessarily think to take seriously. I find to be a very important part of Christianity.
I have a question for liturgy. Do you believe that it is possible to grasp the good, the nature of the good, if you were, let's say, a Chinese Taoist, far away from Christianity, and then if some Christian, Orthodox Christian monks were to encounter this Taoist and talk about this positive Tao that you were talking about, would they consider, well, this person, they don't believe in Jesus, so they're going to go to hell? Uh-oh, it's frozen again. Don't worry, we're going to get her back. But meanwhile, again, a reminder, patreon.com/breaktherules. Look at that face, that screenshot that's still left of the camera, which is probably burned now, just like the last phone. But patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a patron today. You're going to get exclusive episodes that are not going to be showing up, at least not in their entirety, on the BTR YouTube channel, including an unedited episode with Rahim Kassam that I did a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to be releasing an edited version on YouTube next week, but that is one definitely to look out for. If you guys don't know about Rahim, he was the number 2 guy for the British Gentleman. Why do I keep forgetting his name? He was part of Brexit. Nigel Farage, that's it. So he was a friend of Nigel Farage's. He also interviewed Donald Trump, and he was wearing a MAGA hat that whole time on the show, so very, very pro-Trump guy, and I was discussing about, possible dangers with having Trump assume more of a dictatorial power and all of that, and I don't mean to go on a tangent here, but Neil, since it's just the two of us right now, I am kind of curious what you're making of this whole Trump situation, because I don't know if we'll have a chance to talk about it next week when What If That Alt History is joining BTR for a debate with you, Neil, about the Middle Ages, about the Dark Ages, rather. But right now, the time that we have, any thoughts on what's been going on with that assassination, how now that's not really a focus anymore, the media's moved on, and what exactly are you seeing going on? I know it's kind of a curveball, but...
It is a curveball, and I'm not going to lie. Look, I'm just waiting to see what happens in November. I'm hoping that it's not going to be a civil war, but I do want to say something about what Liturgy was saying about the balance between philosophy and mysticism, rationalism, mysticism, right? And I think in the 2nd century, you see in the writings of Flavius Philostratus and the life of Apollonius of Tyana, Apollonius of Tyana is a magician, but he's also a philosopher. And he travels around the world performing miracles, but also teaching rational philosophy to people and correcting people who are too, as Liturgy was pointing out, becoming monsters through dark magic or whatever, with sorcery and idolatry and all these nonsensical things that don't actually do anything for humanity. And he's basically like pointing out, like, oh, you're sick? Yeah, you could perform all these rites and light up some of this myrrh and frankincense, and that might heal you. The gods might heal you. That's true, but it might be easier if you actually got a better diet, stopped drinking wine as much, got a little healthier on the way too. You can kind of meet the gods halfway, and so that sort of rational outlook was already something that I don't think Christianity owns that. That's what I'm basically getting at.
Yeah.
But I do I agree that that's sort of something you don't see with these new age freelancers on the internet who are just like do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And it's like you're right. I agree with you. There's those type of people are hard to deal with. They're hard to like.
Yeah, like the I am God people, you know, like that's. But as far as the Taoists, you know, who are otherwise good, would they be condemned to hell by these church fathers? Liturgy, you were cut off there. Another overheating, but let me know what your take is on that.
But before I answer, what what do you guys think, or you know, like how, like, sure, like let's say that there, I mean, okay, so clearly there are sages in other traditions, you know, so you know you don't need to be a Christian. I would probably say the holiest person I ever met, personally, a person who like kind of made me really be like, wow, like there's a God, you know, like or like it's possible to be a saint. That person was not a Christian. It was someone who rejected the church because it was gay, and he associated Christianity with being gay. So
what? Wait, you got to explain that part. What?
Well, I mean I'm saying that like I think that one can achieve sainthood without being an avowed Christian.
Yeah. No, I mean the whole Christianity being gay part.
What's the thing about Christianity?
Yeah, we can't just run over that. Let's give us more details.
No. The person was gay and associated Christianity with persecuting gay people.
Oh, I heard you wrong. I'm sorry.
But
yeah, I thought you were talking about like these really far right people who are now looking at what's going on in modern Christianity. They were saying, no, it's too gay for me, dude. I can't take it.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like. Okay, I got it.
Yes. No, but it's
weird.
But it's I definitely want to get your take, Neil, on that as well. Like with these sages. Yeah, let me know.
Well, and another angle of that same question is like, if not, I guess I would say that basically Christianity is, you know, like maybe like the best way to do it is Christianity. Like the Christianity is such a powerful touchstone for the difference between true religious devotion and, so, you know, just self-centered magic. And like, if not that, how does one make the distinction between self-deceptive occultism versus like good rationalist sage?
So, I agree with you that Christianity does have that. Oh, by the way, just mute your microphone.
Yeah.
Feedback going.
Sorry.
You're good. All right, there we go. I do agree that Christianity and I think in particular, what I've noticed from Orthodox Christians, especially, is opposed to Southern Baptists. There is more of a, what's the word I want to use? It works as a tool. I don't know, tool, is that the word I want to use? But you can see how for some people it definitely has that effect of formulating and changing lives and bringing, having, a family growing up under a church or whatever. There is some sort of value going on there. I also think that you can make the same argument for people growing up in Zoroastrian homes in the Middle East somewhere, because there's still Zoroastrians, up in the Kurdistan and Iran and
I'll just cut in for 1 second. Yeah. I actually I agree that Zoroastrianism specifically is, I think, underappreciated as a predecessor of Christianity. I think that, also because it was really in Persia, like Zoroastrianism was such a huge influence on Judaism,
Yes,
as well as on Christianity, and
absolutely.
even on Greek philosophy. Like the fire worship. Heraclitus lived in Ephesus, which was in Persia.
Hmm.
So we like to think of the Greeks as like starting this thing, but
Yeah, and what did
um,
Heraclitus write
yeah,
about? He write about idolatry being dumb. He didn't like it.
right. So
Well,
shout out to Georgia. I think that should be more recognized within
Hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah. But we're still running into trouble here where if you appreciate the work of all these great philosophers, if the church fathers like Scholarios or however his name is said were to meet them, they would have a lot of issues with the fact that they don't accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, regardless of any of these other positive things. So that's why I think Neil was talking about how he sees the Ecumenical Council as grabbing onto the needle and stopping it from moving any further, and degrading life here on Earth. Because there weren't that many things that were being created, as far as art, poetry, things of that nature, and it was a pretty dark time. So that would be the pushback to just keeping it in this very specific dogmatic way, regardless of various beautiful mysteries that people might have been experiencing during that time if they were like a monk. Like I have full
Well,
confidence if you were a monk, you'd be experiencing a lot of beautiful things when meditating. But as far as how the rest of the world is during that time, that doesn't seem great.
well, okay. I mean, maybe this kind of grounds my previous answer too. So I would say that the thing is that, again, that the ecumenical councils revealed the actual nature of the Holy Trinity. Like that there's real metaphysical content to what the Trinity is, and that it's very paradoxical. That it's three persons and they're one, and one's the Father, one's the Son, one's the Holy Spirit. There's the begetting and the proceeding, and then you know um, then Mary gave birth to God. They Mary, not just to a person but to God. That Christ was really God, not just man. That he had divine and human natures and divine and human will, and that that he can appear in all this sort of stuff. That um, there's something in that is not expressed in the same way in any other religion, and that I would argue that Hegel was able to distill it in a more abstract way than the councils did. And so that, like, even though Orthodoxy, it's very like trad to invoke Orthodoxy, like, I'm not reactionary in that way. Like, I believe that that when Hegel says that he sort of articulated something conceptually that was only contained in images in Christianity before, that he's right, and so that makes Christian faith a little more abstract after Hegel than it did before Hegel. So that because he's and I think what Hegel got wrong though was that then he didn't think that you needed religious liturgy any longer. So that he was kind of too greedy with philosophy's ability to abstract the Trinity, and that might be the root in a lot of the excesses in secularism, with kind of it's like industrialism and that kind of thing.
Neil, what say you, buddy?
Yeah. Like I was saying before.
Oh, and Liturgy, you got to mute yourself every time because you don't have headphones on.
Yeah,
There's a
I can hear
feedback.
I'm doing such a bad job of doing that. Sorry.
No
all right.
problem. All right.
No, as I was saying, I think like I'm trying to think of like how I want to take this conversation, because I don't really disagree with what you said there, but I want to go back to like what we were saying about the usefulness of following a particular creed or religion or whatever. And you could see Buddhist monks as parallels to the monks of Mount Athos that are dropping out of society, and that's one way to do it. And then there's the more societal way, where it's like you're still a part of society. You didn't drop out, become a monk, but you're going to a church once a week or something like that. I actually want to see going forward. I'm not trying to just end or oppose Christianity and bring about some sort of atheistic, no more spirituality world. I would like to see more of a diversity going forward, where, I don't know, somebody built a temple to some sort, I don't know, Dionysus maybe. I'm just throwing something out there. And within these spaces, people can sort of bring the artistic expression of what they believe in, what they're divinely inspired by, but also be led by rationalism, which is the same rational temperance that we find within Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Judaism, that kind of sort of guide these religions into not being just like some sort of chaotic woo-woo fest, right? And so I would like to see that going forward. That's I'm not trying to abolish religion. I actually want to see a world where the religions are more diverse, as what you would have saw in the 2nd century.
I have a quick question for Neil, though. If we're talking about the diversity of religion, this is not to say anything about perennialism, because perennialism, for example, would consider the Old Testament and the New Testament to also be a part of it. But specifically, if we're talking about a lot of these paganistic rites, it seems like there is a return to a lot of very primordial, archetypical concepts, regardless of what the names of these gods happen to be. So if we're talking about diversity, do you believe that when people have this more of a mystery school philosophy approach to uncovering what is the nature of reality, they keep coming back to the same archetypes, and those archetypes end up being expressed as different names, but it is still talking about the same process? Do you see that? And I'm curious then if Liturgy sees that as well, but Neil, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. The Tao, if you mentioned the Tao has a lot of concepts that you can see echoing in the Tao that you can map onto Christianity in a lot of ways. And the Tao is not doing. There's no stories. There's no prophets. There's no pharaoh. There's no legends. It's just right. It's just it's like right to the spiritual, right to the mysteries, I guess if you want to call it that. But yeah, I think this is what Carl Jung points out, is that there's these archetypes that are found, and maybe not universal as in in the universe, but definitely in humans, you see the reoccurring. So I think there's something to say about that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, and Liturgy, what do you think?
I'm more inclined to think that different religious traditions have emphasized different things. I think that there's nothing quite like the mix of courage or I guess of faith and compassion in Christianity. Again, the way that it's developed, like its role in world history, I guess I think that we can have a secular point of view where we're kind of imagining different religions are different flavors of soda or something like that.
That's not my point, though. I just want to make sure you understand that when I was talking about these different religions, I was talking about more of a discovery of the truth through the process of philosophy, which then ends up having these repeated archetypes over and over again.
Yeah, but I just mean that I don't think that all like what we call religion, that there's like a genus of religions, and that like, Taoism and Islam and Buddhism are all different like species of that genus. It seems to me like I think there's just one religion, and it's Christianity, and that there are that there are different types of religious practice. Like for example, that yoga is a religious practice, and I actually am a devout yoga practitioner, as well as being a
Do you have the Kundalini going
of
on the
Christ.
spine?
Oh yeah.
Ah, there we
um,
go.
uh, but, but like that, like something like that, like yoga developed in like a sort of a sphere where there were lots of different religious traditions that were using it. Um, and it's something that you don't find in Christianity as much. That there is a little bit of it in Eastern Christianity and Sikhism, but so from I'm a Christian, so from my Christian perspective, Christianity is a religion, and I would not be living in faith if I were to kind of try to step back and look at it more surgically than that.
By the way, Liturgy, could you try to maybe turn your camera off? Because maybe then the audio is good, because the connection is not great right now. You keep on freezing and glitching out. So yeah, let's see if maybe that's going to work better. But to differentiate what we can look at when it comes to religions, I don't think it makes sense to see it all as like a grab bag of candies or whatever, because Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, these three are specific, like, revealed religions, and revealed, going all the way from Judaism to, Islam being supposedly, the final one, while these other ones seem to be more of a process of philosophy, understanding nature and seeing man as the microcosm of like a greater macrocosm and how it relates. So my whole point here is that it may be possible to distinguish what is the religion that people end up uncovering through thought versus a religion that may have been brought here. I mean, according to Jason Resinger-Johnny, may have been brought here by other beings, specifically in order to socially engineer people, but that's like a whole other discussion. But what I wanted to ask Neil here is, when it comes to... you're still glitching out. When it comes to the process of philosophizing... well, you know what? I'm going to skip that for now. Neil, any thoughts specifically on this differentiation of like Islam, Christianity, and Judaism away from those?
They're not equal. They're not the same. You could find common archetypes, as Jung points out in all of his writings. But you're right. They're not the same. They all have different end games. They all have different worldviews, and they're all different. They're different. Like, they're period. So, you can't judge. You can't equate them with each other. You can't, like, this sort of new age drive to sort of unite all the religions into one. We're all one, man. I just don't think it works. I think at some point you have to choose a worldview. You have to choose a direction, and that's one thing that I think the dogma does for Christianity, is it does give itself an identity. We believe in the Trinity. We believe Christ died and rose on the third day, all that stuff. There is some sort of identity there. So I do, and the point I'm making is, you can't unify these traditions into one. It just doesn't work. They're opposed. They have opposed.
Well, I mean, if you're saying that's what I was trying to say, that's not what I meant. I mean, my take on the three Abrahamic faiths is that they are, they're all kind of competitors for being Christianity. They're all the messianic religion, and that they've also all influenced one another more than modern people really realize. And that they are interpenetrating. So for example, and this goes back to the Renaissance, which I'm something I think we're all in agreement on, that the Renaissance was a great time. Which that was when Cabala and Christianity first made contact. So Cabala was developed by Jews in Spain when Spain was being ruled by Muslims, and so it was Jews in a formerly Christian land that was under the control of Muslims who developed Cabala, and then it was developed some more in Israel, and then it entered into the Christian sphere during the Renaissance with Ficino and Reuchlin and Pico, and that's I guess I see. I mean, I take Kabbalah pretty seriously. I think that for people who really care about theology and mysticism, you know, you have to. I mean, all theologians do this anyway. You sort of you engage with these other traditions. I sort of see, I guess, the tradition of Kabbalah as the esoteric part of Christianity. Which is kind of what it is.
I have a question about the Cabala. So, if we were to imagine the goal of Kabbalah from what I, as a Jew, I'm able to understand. Oh, and please mute yourself, just so there's no feedback. So thank you. So, the goal of Kabbalah is self-transcendence through the process of going up these various sephirot, and it's a similar system, I would say, to yoga, going through the 7 chakras and all that. The church fathers, if we're talking about Eastern Christianity, they would, in my opinion, very much look down on any attempt to understand the essence of the divine other than just through the energies of the divine, where, you have like this mystical experience, but you're not really able to understand what all of it means until, I guess, the Day of Judgment or whatever. I'm not necessarily sure. But the idea here is that Kabbalah, or any kind of mystical system that is apart from whatever is prescribed by Christianity, in my opinion right now, it would be looked down upon because it gives too much power to the individual to transcend as opposed to having to go through a particular Christian dogma. Liturgy, I'm curious what you think, as well as Neil.
I mean, I don't think that's especially true. I mean, I guess it also depends on whether you're talking about, and this is what I was kind of getting towards before, that like whether you are, devoting your life to studying theology and that kind of thing versus being an ordinary householder, and so like that there's a certain culture around Christianity where people aren't, the average person isn't like devoting themselves to deep mystical study. So I mean, maybe Kabbalah is discouraged in that context, but I mean, I mean, so my favorite, I say this a lot, that I see the great sacred text of the 20th century as Meditations on the Tarot, which is, I think, underappreciated, though it's becoming better and better known. And in short, we don't have to really go into detail about it, but it's a Christian work endorsed by Cardinal Balthazar, so endorsed by a Catholic cardinal, that is exoterically Christian, but then under the hood, it is a synthesis of Cabala and Hermeticism and Neoplatonism, and that's just that's not heretical because it's incorporating them insofar as they are consistent with dogma, and I have another point, but
Well, I'm curious, Neil, whether you think that it is possible to mix these things up, taking a mystical Jewish tradition of the Kabbalah and incorporating that into Christianity. Like, would the church fathers be fine with something like that, or no?
Um, well, like Liturgy says, I guess if it's in line with the dogmas, then I guess. But I just don't know why someone would want to. I just don't know the purpose of it. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is it just mysticism purposes? I'm not really like Kabbalah is not my strong area. I've done a little reading on it.
Yeah,
It
or
just
yoga, or any of these things, or the tarot.
yoga seems more practical because there's a physical, there's the body,
Yeah.
there's something tangible going on there. I just don't know why Kabbalah why someone would be interested in Kabbalah if you have the doctrines of the church already.
And by the way, Neil, your internet connection is also right now a little bit weird. I don't know if there's anything you can do on your side, but it's
I'm plugged in. I'm totally plugged in right now.
yeah, I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, yeah, Liturgy. Let me know what you think.
so I mean, so another thing is like it can be easy to focus on kind of like maybe more childish aspects of dogma, like like did you believe that X, Y, and Z fact is true or something like that. uh I think part of why it's possible to abstract Christianity out of explicit Christianity is because there is a attitude towards world history um, that is sort of structurally Christian, even if it's not overtly, avowedly naming Christ. And I'm thinking of another book that I especially like called Gnostic Return and Modernity by Cyril Reagan, who's another Catholic thinker who contrasts. He contrasts cosmogonical and eschatological accounts from between Christianity and what he thinks of as Gnostic. So, like for example, there's a Christian idea, really a Judeo-Christian idea, I think even Islamic as well, that God is omnipotent and very happy, and chose to create the world only because he wanted to, because he was so happy that he just happily created the world, right? And that the Gnostic idea, is that something went wrong, basically. There's a bunch of different Gnostic ideas, but that God faced a problem that he had to solve, or that there's someone disobedient, did something wrong and created a messed up world and that kind of thing. And then similarly, so that in that account, the idea is you need to escape the world somehow, and that's what you should do in Gnosticism, or like in paganism, the eschatology is like, well, the world's never going to really change, and if you're suffering, you should just realize it, uh, realize that this is just how life is, and that it's actually good, or something like that. Whereas in Christianity, there's this like hope that like the material world will actually transform. That we'll have the kingdom of heaven on earth, and that we'll be living in our bodies, and this kind of thing. And so, and there's a lot, that's very explicit, and that's something that Cabala and Christianity share. And yeah, that like that your whole basically that it's not just about a series of facts about things that have happened or rituals that you should observe or not, but that there's a whole worldview. And I think so much of the time when we're talking about religion and comparing different religions, we're assuming that none of them are true. We're assuming this kind of secular worldview, where religions are these different practices we can choose from. and they were thinking about like whether they're useful or not, I guess. And that's not a Christian way of looking at it. And saying that is in line also with materialist philosophy. Like it's kind of a Marxist idea too, in a way, that sort of you're already in the middle of things, and being living like Christ is somehow just like continuing to pursue to pursue a kind of embodied horizon or something like that. I didn't put that well.
Yeah. Neil, any thoughts? I mean, I understand what Liturgy's talking about, but my issue here has to do with wanting to have this heaven on earth that was given to you by revelation, that it's going to happen at a certain point, you don't know when, versus doing something in the here and now to create, if not a heaven on earth, at least something close to it. So there's that aspect of it that still bothers me when it comes to, like Pope Sylvester saying, like, any moment now, Christ is going to come back. So it kind of lends itself, I think, to not working on oneself. But then again, we do have the Protestants and the Protestant work ethic. I don't know how to explain that. But yeah, any thoughts on that, self-development in the here and now versus the specific revelations and how that ends up being reflected in the kind of society we live in. And then I think it's going to be time to wrap it up pretty soon.
Sure. And this goes back to what I was saying before about returning to a more three-dimensional and variety of wider ranging scope of doctrines and ideas about what we believe to be about God, opening up more possibilities for different types of worships. Again, all also keeping rationalism at the forefront, philosophy at the forefront, psychology at the forefront, those things that the church seems to be able to do as well. But letting go of having the answers to the universe, or that the world's going to end one day, or that God actually did come here one time and he did do this and he said this and he said that. Or those type of things, to me, I think limit us. Where we have a more mystical, like, that is the word actually. So mystical does come from mysterious, the word mysterion in Greek. But the mysteries of the universe remaining open for inquiry, and those type of things driving people forward, and not waiting for the world to end, but waiting for humans. I guess it's very Gnostic what I'm trying to do, because it's taking a bite of the apple and saying, let's gain more knowledge.
Yeah, just don't hurt people intentionally.
I'm not saying we're going to become God, but yeah. I'm saying we recognize our human nature, and we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty easy to understand, like, don't abuse people, don't screw people over, don't do obviously bad things to other people, and at least if you take that approach, that I think goes closer to the idea of the good. But before we go, I want to say, from my good friend Anton of Anton's Biltong, if you guys go to biltongusa.com, you are going to have access to the best biltong that you have ever eaten. And I don't know, Liturgy, if you know what biltong is. I mean, Neil, you're no stranger to biltong because I've talked about it before. But biltong is a South African dried meat, kind of like jerky, but much better than jerky. Highly recommended. If you type in code word BTR at checkout, you are going to get free shipping for your biltong. So go there right now, landofbiltong.com or antonsusa.com, whichever one, do that. Patreon.com/breaktherules as well. So, Liturgy, this has been an amazing conversation. I am really appreciative of the fact that we get to have different perspectives here. Any final thoughts on this conversation? If anything's if anything's changed in your worldview, if there are certain new things that you're considering right now, or anything, go for it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had some thoughts on that last point, which maybe I can sort of dovetail into a closing statement or whatever. But so I'm not sure what to make of the this sort of antinomy, I guess, between, on the one hand, imagining heaven on earth, as something that we're waiting for by practicing piety while the world just goes on, versus this other version, uh, work ethic you were talking about. Like, it's all as the
Liturgy,
scientific
you're glitching
revolution
out
and the
again.
industrial revolution were like,
You're glitching out. Could you please repeat
oh
that,
no,
but also turn your camera off, because maybe then the audio is going to be better, because you're glitching out again. It was really good before, though.
this is it working now?
Yes, it is. Yes.
You can hear me okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm like, I don't think it's for us to know exactly how the kingdom of heaven will come to earth, and it's that strange thing about science and industry and capitalism where it's like, are they good or are they bad? It's like clearly it's both, that like in some sense all of that is like a fruit of Christianity, but then it's also this disaster. So like, but not exactly a disaster also. And so, I can imagine conceiving of the kingdom of heaven as something like AGI, where it's realized, through human effort, through the market, this kind of almost accelerationist sort of approach. But I can also imagine that being the Antichrist, and that's exactly what Christianity is supposed to sort of be other than. But I think that the Christian approach to this like time that we're in is it has a lot to do with observing certain moral precepts, like you were saying, but also self-realization. Finding your creative soul, and developing your gifts and things like that. And as the world becomes more and more digitized, you can imagine the liturgical sphere kind of becoming a larger and larger portion of it, or something like that, and so that gets into kind of questions about posthumanism and so forth, which I have no real answer to, but I'm very interested in, and a lot of my kind of philosophical writing and speculation is on topics like this. So that's my final thought. Oh, and also my band's going on tour in a couple of weeks, so check out our tour dates.
I was just going to ask you. Yeah, you have the Google spreadsheet there on your site, or Google Doc or whatever.
Yes,
yeah,
very professional. Right?
Yeah, people can click that and see the dates. Wonderful music. I really enjoy it. And Haela, thank you so much for coming in, and I really appreciate you talking with us about this. Make sure to mute yourself, though, with my final statement, because of the glitchy echoing. So, Neil, any final thoughts? And after we go, by the way, don't go, because I wanted to test something out with your upload speed, because something is really weird right now with your camera as well. But anyway, yes, any final thoughts, brother, and where people can find you and all that good stuff? Neil, are you there, buddy?
Oh, I muted him.
Yeah,
okay,
there we go.
Yeah, I just want that was well said. That last, we can leave it at that. Nothing to add there. The channel's Gnostic Informant, and you can just look it up on YouTube. It'll come right up. And I'm making a lot of documentaries right now, working on some documentary stuff. And yeah, should be fun.
Sweet. All right, guys. And you could find me at Lev Po on Twitter or X or whatever. And again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, patreon.com/breaktherules. And Neil, next week, you are back on Break the Rules with What If That Alt History. Finally, you guys are going to be talking about the Dark Ages, whether the Dark Ages were not as bad as people say they were. That's according to What If Alt History. And you take the opposite approach. And I think you gave us a little bit of a teaser of that today when you were talking about the Dark Ages, and we're really going to get into it next week on Thursday, and you guys are going to see this the link to the stream as soon as this is over. And there was also one more super chat which I wanted to read, and the way that I could quickly find these super chats, by the way, is going to the BTR Discord server, which is the last thing that I wanted to plug. I think some of you guys who are watching this who don't know that there is a Discord server, well, there is one. So if you guys go into the link that I am just about to post, you are going to be part of the BTR Discord, and if you become a patron, patreon.com/breaktherules, patrons are going to have special Discord privileges as well. So now that the Discord has been posted, why did I post this Discord? Oh, right, because of the chat. So here we go. If we are going to go into the chat for a second here, I am going to see one final super chat that was sent, which I missed, and it is from James Jones, 199. 10 Commandments in OK Schools, your views. So that's the last question. Paid money. Any quick thoughts, super quick, and then we're going to go. Let's start with liturgy. 10 Commandments in schools, pro or against?
I'm kind of okay with it, but not I wouldn't like fight for it, but I wouldn't be against it either.
All right, Neil, any thoughts? 10 Commandments in schools.
I'm just completely opposed to it for obvious reasons. I think people know that about me. And also because who's actually really following the 10 Commandments anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe liturgy you are. I mean, I don't know. Right? Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching.
I do my best.